chosen to join the IMF. Your mission, and you must accept this, you'll have to prove you've got what it takes by completing a series of tests devised by me. Run up those stairs and you'll see men with briefcases. Use the code 555 to unlock the right briefcase. The fastest recruits will earn a trip to rendezvous with Ethan Hunt in Vienna, Austria. Oh, and this message will self-destruct. I'm kidding. Let's go! Ready to make a splash? Unlock a box at the far end of the tank. Don't miss your flight. Time to wing it. Well, let's go. It's not called mission hanging around. Congratulations, recruit. I never doubted you for a... Well, that's not important at the moment.
So as part of our recent CIPD event, one of the tables was looking at the onboarding process and how to make that as efficient and effective as possible. In order to capture all of the outputs, we decided to do a SWOT analysis. Whilst I'm going to be pulling out a few key points of each element of the SWOT, you will also see the full outputs on the screen as we walk through this. So the first area that we chose to look at was strengths. What we've done is pulled out some of the key highlights of all the conversations that we've had to share with you today. The first one was recognising that the induction process doesn't start on day one. In fact, it starts as soon as that job offer has been accepted by that colleague and contracts have been sent out. So why not get engaged with your new starters before they've even walked through the door? Get them to understand the culture, the way that the business operates, so they come in having a real strong understanding and a confidence that's required for day one. Other key points that were pulled out were management supporting the onboarding process and how important that is to have that consistent management support from around the business and that buy-in that's so key. And another one that we looked at was the feedback from colleagues who have actually gone through the induction process. So if we're always trying to build and make things better and through that continual improvement, the great way to do that is to actually have the colleagues that have been through the process tell us what they loved about it, what we could do differently, and what they just definitely didn't enjoy. All great and valid information. So again, some great examples here, just pulled out a few for you to talk about. Information overload was a key theme that we talked about on the evening, and too many tick boxes. So we highlighted these two because they both go really hand in hand together. You've got the business side of things who are understandably wanting to ensure that colleagues are as competent as possible when they come out of the classroom, but sometimes there's that temptation to give us too much information to put into our training material so that they can tick the box in their department to say, job done, we've supported the training team with everything that they need. But then what that causes is, as we've experienced, is information overload. We need to facilitate and consult with the business to really get them to understand that we can have them to a certain level of competence within the classroom or however your induction period works, and then agree what the next phase of that is. How can we continue to grow on that competence that they've achieved during their first few weeks in the business, so as to avoid that information overload. The next section we looked at was opportunities. So some of the highlights from that section were being able to pick and choose the modules that form part of your induction. So say if you had a 4-week induction and you had to complete certain topics, do they all have to be in the same order, or could we ask colleagues to actually look at them and pick and choose, as long as they can be deemed competent in some sort of assessment or role play or scenario based learning at the end of their induction or onboarding process, then surely that's still achieving the same goal. Which then led further conversations about, well, what can actually be delivered online versus in the classroom? And again, from that 70-20-10 approach, we're trying to encourage people to take ownership of their learning right from day one within the business, and that's a great way to do it. It's also a way to engage with these stakeholders as well and get them to understand that there's lots of different ways of learning now, and it doesn't always have to be a traditional face-to-face in the classroom type of learning. So one of the biggest threats that came out was time. So being time poor during an onboarding period is sometimes a real challenge, especially when you've got to get so much information across to your learner. So it's about really sort of identifying with your stakeholders, what are the main points that we need to ensure that they are fully competent on before they hit the floor and do the job. And what is it potentially that we can adapt to a phased approach? Or is there any other way in which we can start to save time? Maybe less classroom based, a bit more online learning, some sort of self-assessments that the learner can actually start to do. There's many different ways in which we can think about that. Technology was also on the list for threats. So again, if your organisation isn't as forward thinking maybe about technology or doesn't have the budget to invest, it's just simple exploration of what technology is available, starting to engage with the right people within your business to alleviate the nervousness, but also just to show that the costs really don't have to be that expensive, because there are quite a lot of decent products out there that don't cost very money, if anything at all. And the final part for threats was the fact that we were very process driven on occasions. So that's something that we're sometimes guilty of here, which is forgetting about that holistic approach and just homing in on each individual sort of part of the role that they have to do in order to hit the floor and be competent. But instead of doing it in that way, you're not really given that holistic overview of what the role is. It's not that natural environment that they'll then find themselves in when they hit the floor or go off into their new role. So rather than being process driven, it's about thinking about from a scenario point of view, and can we get the key messages across still but avoid sort of those vanilla processes that don't necessarily end up teaching us anything. If anyone wants to see the full SWOT analysis, please email us and let us know.